Hello again. This is Michael Whitaker. This is photo post number 20 of 21. The topic of this post is formalizing photo projects. The image I've selected for this post is Opening Soon, which is an image from a project I entitled Restricted Attention. In fact, this is the iconic image for that project. Before we discuss the photo, I'd like to provide some background information specifically regarding the initial questions that resulted in me doing this series of 21 posts. The question was, what's going on inside my mind when I capture specific images? Obviously, as we have gone along, there's a lot of things going on inside my head. The things going on inside my head while I'm photographing is directly related to this post. In my first career in social psychology, I created, managed, and completed 17 projects. Through the process of my first career, I learned goal setting and I taught goal setting to other professionals and to the children and youth assigned to my programs. There's one very critical idea about a goal that most people don't know. A goal is not a goal unless it's written. Unwritten goals are nothing more than wishes because there's no formal process for achieving that goal. So a goal is not a goal unless it is written. In my mind, in my experience, a project is not a project unless it's written. There's just too much going on in projects to try to keep them alive and well in one's head during the process. All projects begin with ideas, and ideas are great. It's where things begin to happen. But if the idea stage is never put behind us, then it'll always just be something that's in my head. So I've always written my projects. I provide written descriptions of all my projects. If I'm asking someone for money, that's essential. Whether it was a $300,000 project or a $1.5 million project, the people handing out the money wanted to see something written. So I just got in the habit of writing all of my projects. When I moved over to photography and began my documentary projects and other types of photo projects, I continued to write everything. So what's going on in my head has already been covered through a written description of what it is I'm trying to accomplish, and I'll address that as we go along. I've included a slide with the information from the post. All the information on the screen here is in the post. But basically, I have two types of photo projects. The first is a formal project. A formal project involves complex coordination, usually with multiple people. There's just so much going on in so many different places. The written description of this type of project is very complex, it's very detailed, if for no other reason, so I can keep up with what's happening. The second type of photo project that I do, I refer to as informal, and that's when I work alone. That relates to some abstract idea I had in my head, and I just think it would be neat to create a project that goes along that line of thought, that particular concept, whatever it may be. I'm not going through my process, my written process for a formal grant. that's too big, that's too complex, that's almost a course, and there are other people that do that. If you're into documentary photography, you can go to the Social Documentary Network and find people who teach classes about how to write a complex project description. This post is about the informal photo projects that I do. The projects I do by myself, they're basically in my head. I'm looking for images that go along with specific ideas. There are 4 parts to the process I use for my informal projects. The first is the philosophy. That's just an idea, a reason, a mindset for creating the process. What thoughts came to my mind to make me think of this? This post is about a photo from a project entitled Restricted Attention, so I'll use it to give a couple examples. The philosophy behind starting this project is that it seemed to me that more and more people were not paying attention to what was going on around them. They simply were lost and for a number of different reasons and just not seeing what's going on. So I thought I'm going to do an informal project about people who aren't focused, people who are distracted, people who just aren't paying attention. So that was the philosophy behind restricted attention. I'm still working on the project, so it's still the premises behind that project. Secondly, it's what I call desired results. Why do I want to do this project? Why did I want to do restricted attention? The primary reason was I wanted to try to bring people's attention to the fact that they may be missing a whole lot of really rich experiences by not paying attention to what's going on around them. I started this project several years ago. I recently decided to get back into it, which I have. And what convinced me to get back into it was I was at a playground one day, or sitting by a playground in a parking lot while my wife was at an appointment. And I looked up and there was a mother with her child, and the child was trying to swing. And the mother wasn't paying attention because she was on her telephone. She was texting or viewing something, but the mother was paying attention to the telephone, not to the toddler in the swing who wanted to be pushed. So it was a boy, so he could be swinging. So I think more than ever there's a need to call people's attention to we're missing a whole lot in life because we're not paying attention now more than ever because we have that phone in front of our face. After that, I go to number 3, the potential themes. How many different ways can I identify subject, in this case, for restricted attention? There was the option of people who are just so engrossed in what they're doing, they're not noticing what's going on. I have a photo from Paris of 2 tourists sitting on a bench, staring at their tourist book about what's going on around them, at which point a little French boy walks up, climbs on the end of the beach about 6 or 7 feet from them, the end of the bench, and begins to urinate into the bushes. The little boy's father was there. He saw me watching. He smiled and waved. I pointed at my camera, said, "Can I take a photo?" And he waved approval. So this little boy jumped up on the bench, pulled his pants down, began urinating in the bush. Took about 3 or 4 minutes. Those 2 women sitting on that bench never, ever saw that boy urinating into the bushes. They were so engrossed in what they're doing, they were oblivious to what was going around. So there are all kinds of different ways that people can be oblivious. When I lived in New York City, I rode the subway a lot. It always amazed me how many people sort of zoned out on the subway. I thought when I lived there, the subway was relatively safe, but I would never zone out on a subway. I guess that was just their way of dealing with the chaos or the confusion. Other people read. And there were things that happened in the subway cars that no one ever saw, that some people never saw, because they were so engrossed in what they're doing, they didn't notice what was going on around them. There are multiple ways, multiple themes that I identified for restricted attention. I had a whole list of them. It's a written project. I wrote them down. Included in that list of written possibilities were advertisements that featured eyes. I had noticed at that point, and they still happen, that there are posters with big eyes on them or ads with big eyes on them. And it makes a really nice photo, particularly for juxtaposition, which is what we're going to talk about in post 21. But I had already imagined that, big eyes, big pictures of eyes might be important factors to include in this project. Then the fourth thing is potential locations. Where might I go to capture images? Sometimes I would specifically go to locations, parks, public places, that sort of thing. Other times, like during my Cruzada project in Cuba, I would just keep that project in the back of my mind, and when I would pass something that I think represented restricted attention, I would capture that image. Had nothing to do with the Cruzada, but I'm there with the Cruzada with my camera in my hand. I see something that looks like restricted attention, so I capture the image. So the written project for informal, the written process for informal projects is philosophy, desired results, potential themes, and potential locations. I typically carry a journal around with me when I'm just beginning a new project to study all the variations that I've identified. After a while, it just sort of gets fixed in my mind. There is very good reason to do the written process for the informal projects. It has to do with a phenomenon in psychology called frequency illusion. Frequency illusion. For reasons I won't go into, it's also referred to as the Baader-Meinhof phenomena. If you are anywhere near typical, there has been an occasion in your life, let's just say using a word, that you recognize or you identify a new word, you learn that new word, it's a new word to you. But after you learn that new word, you suddenly begin to see it everywhere. It's like, oh my, there's that word again. And I literally have said out loud, oh my, probably another choice of words, but there's that word again. I have a young granddaughter who's just now turning 16, but when she was much younger, she was into Taylor Swift. One day, my granddaughter mentioned Taylor Swift to me. I said, I'm sorry, I don't know who Taylor Swift is. I'm not much into pop culture. My granddaughter told me about her, showed me some pictures, and even played a song on her telephone by Taylor Swift. That day, I became aware of Taylor Swift. And it seems like every time I turned around, there was Taylor Swift again. I couldn't get away from her. She was everywhere. And it turns out, literally, she was everywhere. She had been everywhere all along. I just was not aware of her. So I was not paying attention to Taylor Swift. Creating a written description of a project kind of does the same thing. If you go through and you imagine all the possibilities, all the way the idea can be manifested, all the locations you can do. And I mean, in the truest sense, this is called brainstorming. You can brainstorm with other people or you can brainstorm with yourself. I sit down and brainstorm, what are all the possibilities here? And I write them down. The benefit of doing that, the benefit of writing it down, is that it does eventually stay in my head, but it also helps me recognize something I've written down before. And I've told people in the past that due to frequency illusion, when you write down everything, it gives the impression that, this is something you've seen before. This is something you're aware of. This is something I've thought of. So it's like I'm not seeing it for the first time. Sometimes it works so well, it's almost like the image finds me instead of me finding the image. And that's the purpose of using this photograph for this post. My wife and I were in London. We had ridden the bus all the way out to Stonehenge, and that's a long way. And we'd finally gotten back to London. We were both exhausted. I was exhausted. I had put my camera back into my backpack. My camera bag is a backpack. And I had decided I'm through capturing images for the day. And we're just walking down a street in London, and all of a sudden, I see this bus coming. And all of a sudden, that bus triggers in my mind an idea that, that I had for an image for restricted attention. So I got out my camera. I got ready to capture an image of this bus. And my wife said, I thought you were tired. I thought you were putting your camera away for the day. But I said, this image is finding me, so I have a responsibility to capture it. Of course, I was being facetious. But it really was like the image was finding me. It was finding me because it had been there in my head, and it was coming into my view, and that triggered this thought about the eyes on the poster. As the bus got closer, the image changed. This has become the iconic image for this project. The eyes just do it for everybody. The idea that the words "opening soon" is on the advertisement here is the perfect sort of antithesis of restricted attention. Here's a project about restricted attention, and the iconic image says opening soon, like maybe our attention won't be so restricted after this. So the advertisement made this an iconic image for this project. But the people provide the complexity that I like in my photographs. I've mentioned before, I really prefer complex photographs. If you look at this image, there's a lady here and a lady down here looking directly at me. I think this man here also may be looking at me, and perhaps this one back here. Nobody else knows I'm there. They're oblivious to some guy standing on the side of the road photographing their bus. But those, at least maybe 4 people, are staring directly at me or near me. So this image provides the complexity I like. The advertisement provides sort of a catchy look for it. And I was just extremely happy to capture this image. Again, it's film, so I didn't see it till I got back to the U.S., but I'm very happy with this image. I'm also happy with this image because it's sold several times. There's nothing wrong with making an income from photographs. One of my gallery shows in Baltimore, I featured photos from my restricted attention series, and as I said, this photo was purchased multiple times, which made me very happy. Everybody claims there's sort of an artistic nature to this. People going to gallery shows like to talk about, oh, the composition's so wonderful. And yeah, I wasn't thinking any of that. But I was happy that it came out this way, and I'm happy that I was able to sell the image. The point of this post is, if one takes the time to do a written project description of a photo project, it prepares the mind to engage in the project, so that you're just not out there sort of as a wandering minstrel back from the medieval England. There were minstrels who roamed around and just played their songs and interacted. And I'm not criticizing that. Some good street photographers are sort of wandering minstrels. I don't want to be a wandering minstrel. I want to have an idea about what type of image I'm interested in capturing, and I make a written list of those ideas so that when I see them, when I recognize the people, the places, the things, the events, I'm looking at something familiar. That thought's already been in my head, and now I'm seeing the thought materialize ahead of me, right in front of me. That's what happened with this image. An extremely popular image I had sort of imagined in my project description. I was able to capture it, and it's a very successful image. So what's in my head when I capture images? A lot of preliminary work, a lot of pre-imagination. Pre-imagination is actually a word. You pre-imagine what the possibilities are. And when you pre-imagine those possibilities, you recognize them when they confront you or when you encounter them. So what's in your head depends on what you want in your head. And a written project description greatly benefits what's in your head while you're searching for and capturing images. That's all I have to say for this post. That's all I have to say about this image. It makes me feel good when I do something that I think sort of philosophical and people end up liking it like they do here. So you never know what's going to happen when you prepare to discover images that you encounter. Next time is photo post 21 of 21 photo post. Next time is the last photo post. Photo post number 1 was from behind the scenes at the Prague Zoo in the Czech Republic. Photo post number 21 will be from behind the scenes at the Prague Zoo in the Czech Republic. I'm specifically using another very popular photo that I've sold several times that I never thought anyone would buy. We'll talk more about it next week. But, it has to do with juxtaposition. I have a thing for juxtaposition. When you find or put two things together that presents a contrasting concept or a contrasting idea. I love finding juxtaposed images, but sometimes I can get slightly involved in the framing of an image to make an image juxtaposed. That's what we'll talk about next time, and it will be the last in this series. I'm not sure what's next, but next post 21, will be the last in this series. As always, I appreciate your interest in this series. I hope tonight has given you an idea about how I carry so many things around in my head when I'm capturing images. It's a deliberate process. So I appreciate your interest in what's going on in my head when I'm capturing specific images. I'll do the final post in a couple of days, and I'll present it then. Until then, thank you